sure that. Hey, sending. I'm just going to double check. Yeah, Tom Dimitrovich is live. Okay, so we are live on YouTube, Facebook, and LinkedIn, and today I've got Mr. Joe Fello with me. Now, Joe is remote right now, and so Joe and I worked together. Oh, geez, when was it, Joe? How long have you been retired?
Well, 2.5 years, Tom.
2.5 years, man. So he's
Yeah,
been.
we started to work together back in 07, 08.
Yeah, that's right. That's when. Yeah, that's when we created the application team in the residential group. So, Joe, why don't you give no one out here on YouTube land, and or at least those who have been on my channel know who you are. Why don't you give us an overview, what you did for Eaton, a little bit of your background.
Wow. Okay. Well, it wasn't just for Eaton, Tom. I started in 1971 as a technician, mechanical technician at the Westinghouse R&D Center. And a very close friend of mine talked me into going back to school. So I went to Pitt and graduated with a degree in mechanical engineering in 1979. And went to work at the large facility, and Westinghouse facility at large. And then I went on to Beaver and the Tech Center, and finally to Charrington, where I met Tom Dimitrovich, and he kind of redirected my life into working with arc faults and working with customers, and they needed somebody that could understand what the arc fault was and did and how it worked, and could work with people. So they hired Tom, and then I got on Tom's team.
Oh, you gotta love it.
And the one thing I remember about Tom and addressing Bob Handick and I, the three of us, he said, our main job is to put us out of business with the applications department
Right.
and the arc fault. And that's the way we worked. And we had such a great team and great relations with the customers. And, we worked well with the engineering department and with the marketing department at Eaton.
Yeah.
And I think they really valued us. And I think we really made a contribution for the direction of the arc fault circuit breaker.
Absolutely.
And while I was working with Tom, I was asked to do some forensics investigation when breakers were involved. So that's when I would go out all over the country to different fire scenes that had an Eaton breaker.
Yep.
Somewhere in the depositions, and that's where I first got to see some of these marinas and their electrical connections. And I talked to Tom once. I said we had talked about deaths in the marina areas, and I talked to Tom. I said, what can we do about this, Tom? We got a product in the ground fault circuit breaker that could be saving lives. And from then on, it just took off with Tom and I, and code changes, right, Tom?
I remember, Joe, I came back from a trip, and on my desk, I was on my chair, you had a story about Lucas Ritz. And I believe it was a printout from the Mike Holt website. I think he put a newsletter out, and Lucas's story was there about marinas, and you just had a note on there that said, "Come see me," or "We need to talk." I think that was your saying. We need to talk.
We need to talk. Yes.
Yep. And then you were looking at me like, "Hey, we need to do," or you said I needed to do something, right? You said you're involved with the codes and the standards and the National Electrical Code, and I was like, I think you and I made a deal that day that I would try to come up with some language, and you had to come up with the substantiation. And unfortunately, you did a great job, but it was a lot of low-hanging fruit, wasn't it?
It was indeed. It was. Our friend Mike Holt had a lot of information that he had put out there that made it very easy to make our initial code change request. And if you remember, we initially went in at 5 milliamps,
Yep.
and they refused it, but they said that was a good idea.
Yeah, in fact, I remember. So the public input that we put in, and what I'm showing on the screen right now is the one for 553, but we also did a similar, if not the same, language in Article 555 from Marinas. We said the main overcurrent protective device, which feeds the building or floating structure distribution system, shall have GFCI protection for personnel, individual branch GFCI protection for personnel fed by that feeder is a suitable alternate to main GFCI protection. And we added supplemental information to the code panel that you put together of all of the deaths and all of the documentation from Mike Holt and others. And all we had to do was Google, search the internet. And when the panel rejected it, I remember seeing the long look on your face, like, oh, I can't believe we got rejected. But I told you, I said the very first part of the first sentence in their panel statement is what gave us hope. It said, although the recommendation has merit. And that is all we needed to hang on to. And Felix is saying we got
a good thing you were there, because this was my first code change attempt. And you're right. I was shot down, but you found the light in what they said.
Yeah, and it was like okay, so they didn't want, and we understood, 4 to 6 milliamps on the main feeding an entire marina is a challenge. But then we did say, well, you could put it on the feeders, right? So if you had feeders going out to piers, that was at least in our discussion. I remember you and I talking about this, and the panel came back and said no. So what did we do? We did some homework, remember, on trying to find out what is the ground fault protection of equipment on those smaller breakers. What's like the maximum? I know we were at 30 milliamps. I think GE and Squarity and Siemens were at different milliampere, like 50 milliamps, 60 milliamps, and whatnot. And we drew a line in the sand at 100. A lot of people, Joe, think that the 100 milliamps was some scientific number. And in reality, it was just a stab where we said there wasn't going to be a manufacturer who could argue they didn't make a product that tripped within at least 100 milliamps of leakage current. And then we made a change about the main overcurrent device, which feeds the floating structure, shall have ground fault protection not exceeding 100 milliamps. And then we left the language in there about each individual branch circuit. And then it passed. It was 9-9. That was insane.
That all was pretty exciting, wasn't it?
It was. It was. And we ruffled some feathers, or you ruffled some feathers, right? We had some difficult discussions with various people across the country when they were saying that marinas would not be able to be energized at 100 milliamps of leakage current.
Tom, I remember at the Eastern Section meeting back then, after the less than 100 got into the code, guys from New England would come to the Eaton table, not knowing who I was.
Yeah.
And ready to fight.
And ready to fight. Yeah, and all you did, it was, and there was a point where, depending upon who you were talking to, you would just join in and say, I can't believe somebody would put a public input in like that.
but it was with your encouragement. You said, Joe, it's their problem.
Yeah.
They're the ones that have the problem, not us.
Yeah. Yeah. I tell you, it was, you know what I'll do is I'm gonna take some. I've been on inspections in marinas, and um, it was amazing with regard to how terrible some of the installations were that we saw. The pedestals were not maintained whatsoever. And I know I did this with Donnie Cook. We went and we were inspecting some installations, and my job was to just keep track. And we did a percentage of GFCIs that were providing power but not working, and it was like 95 to 97% of the GFCIs that we tested were providing power but not providing any protection. And some of the like the marinas, the pedestals that we saw were so terrible. Thank you. Were so terrible that like this one here, you could see. I'm showing a picture now, Joe, of a receptacle that, I mean, you can tell it looks like there was arcing on the face of the receptacle. I mean, there's beehives in there. There's wasps. There's first time I ever heard of dirt daubers.
Oh yeah.
Some installations weren't too bad. Some installations were absolutely horrible. I'm just looking for some powerful photos that I had. Hold on. Where's it at? Here we go. Here's this was I call it the MacGyver. This was the one, Joe, that has the two it's like an extension cord, and they used duct tape to give it some sort of water repellent capabilities. So when you go to these installations, you start to understand why kids and whatnot are getting electrocuted and dying in marinas. You know, Lucas's story was our motivation, and we found so many others. The Cunningham kid in West Virginia, and there's just too many that we were losing. And so, you know, we basically put some language in, and then what this did was it started. The Research Foundation actually put a program together, the NFPA's Research Foundation, that did some research. And remember, Joe, it went from this is a good picture too. I'll show this one. It went from 100 milliamps, and then the Research Foundation came out with a study that said no, it needs to be 30 milliamps, and then they changed it to 30 milliamps, lowering it from 100. It's just absolutely insane how one public input drove research, and then multiple public inputs later and comments to get us to where we're at right now, that basically provides a tiered solution of groundfall protection in and around these marinas.
You know, it's like the public was waiting.
Yeah,
for us.
that's exactly right. And you know, it's funny. When you brought it up, I thought, why? I mean, when you showed me the data, I'm thinking this has had to have been tried by somebody before, and I could not find any public inputs or public comments for the National Electrical Code looking at GFCI protection or GFPE. So we ended up stirring the pot, so to speak, because the first NFPA research report was titled Assessment of Hazardous Voltage Current in Marinas, Boatyards, and Floating Buildings. And this was dated November of 2014. So we got our stuff in the 2011 code. And then it was November of 2014 that they published. And then in that document, they recommended 30 milliamps. And then the code in the next cycle changed to 30 milliamps, or yeah, 30 milliamps on the main and on every breaker feeding the Marina. And that really drove a lot of change. Drove a lot of change in the stuff. And you know, when I think about the Buck 41 Club, which you are now a part of the Buck 41 Club, you know, I don't know if you know the story of what the Buck 41 Club means. Do you?
No, I don't, Tom. I was going to ask you about that.
Okay. Well, let me. So here's what I did. So let's just think about from the bottom up. The penny is the first item on the Buck 41 Club. The penny represents the penny for your thoughts. Okay. So the penny for your thoughts is, you know how when you say, you know, I don't know if you've ever been, you know, you're in a car or something, you're driving, or you're talking to somebody, where you're sitting there and everything's quiet. You say penny for your thoughts, and they share your thoughts. Well, that penny represents the fact that you shared your thoughts, and you putting that note on my table, on my desk, and saying we need to do something about this, and you shared your concerns. That's how you earned the penny. Now the nickel.
Okay.
The nickel represents, and I know you've heard the saying, if I had a nickel for every time somebody said something, I'd be a rich man, right? So,
Yeah,
so if I had a nickel for everybody who had a great idea and didn't do anything about it, I'd be a rich man. Well, what you did, and I did, I mean, you solicited, you put me, solicited my help in coming up with language, as you brought when you brought the substantiation together, and we did something about it. So the penny is you had the idea. The nickel is you didn't sit around, you actually did something about it. And then the dime is the representation of recognizing that our industry does not change on a dime. You know, you've heard the, you know, turn on a dime or whatnot. So persistence, right? So you put the public input in, then we put the public comment in, and then we monitored and we helped with the research foundation. We worked and monitored the progress of the hornet's nest that we stirred, right? We try to harness the bees a little bit. And then you've got the quarter. And whose picture's on the quarter? George Washington, one of the founding fathers of the United States, right? And if you think about George Washington and the founding fathers and other people in other countries that are like those individuals, they shared their ideas, they instituted change, and they weren't popular. They faced criticism. In some cases, some of the founding fathers were executed from the United States. So when you think about we stirred the hornet's nest, and you said it. You sat at the eastern section, not knowing who they were talking to, and they were talking about all the pain in the butt that was created when these public input and comments went in, and that takes courage. So the penny, the nickel, the dime, the quarter, and then the dollar represents the simple majority that it takes to institute change in codes and standards. And we didn't get a simple majority in the first public input phase, but in the public comment phase, we got every single code panel member to accept the change that you submitted. So
we submitted,
and that's a Buck 41 and so what I'm doing is I'm trying to recognize those who are leaders in the industry, influencing change, not sitting on their hands, doing something about it. And that's you. I mean, if I think about this change in 555 and in marinas and then in other bodies of water, we merged all those together. I mean, if you didn't speak up, if you didn't share that information and then say, hey, what are you going to do about it? What are we going to do about it? And it would never happen. So I think
we could not accept something not happening.
That's right. Yeah.
You're right. Persistence was the primary objective.
Yeah. That is exactly right, Joe. Persistence was important. And what's really funny is I understood the magnitude just because of the deaths. I mean, we had, if I look at the examples, right? You've got Lucas Ritz who passed away, and he has a video on YouTube which I'll post. I'll put a link to Lucas's story. It's a 14 minutes video that tells the story. His father and his mother and his brother tell the story of Lucas's issue, losing his life in a marina. We had Cherokee Lake Yet Bean Station on July 4th of 2012. Noah Winstead and Noah Winstead. There was a Noah Winstead Act for that state to try to drive. What we saw was states trying to bring existing marinas up to date. Michael Knudsen passed away in 2011, and in this case here, he jumped into the water at the end of FDOC. He immediately began to struggle due to electric shock and immediately attempted to swim and hold onto the FDOC platform, at which time he was electrocuted because the infrastructure of the marina was energized. And he grabbed, when we think about safety, when you're getting shocked, what's your natural your inclination is to swim towards what you perceive as safety, which is the dock. And then unfortunately, that's where the shock was coming from. And he was killed.
Yeah.
So the changes, there's I've got a picture of the ground. We went to a couple marinas that instituted the requirements, and then what was really cool about this one, Joe, was after the initial public input, it got its own legs. We didn't really have to do much. I mean, the research, because there were so many people angry and frustrated with the fact that GFCI and GFPE was put into the code, it got the Research Foundation doing multiple studies, and there were many people wanting to try to craft the right language. And then finally, they came upon, in the 2020 code cycle, they got to language I think that will last, and it's a tiered solution. They've got the receptacles providing shore power, which goes to the boats at 30 milliamps. Anything that's a 15 or 20 amp receptacle is GFCI protection. Anything that's not shore power is GFCI protected. And then any of the feeders the feeder conductors going out to the piers are all at 100 milliamps or less. So you could put 100 milliamps there. So you've got a tiered approach to protection on those circuits. And I don't even think we envisioned that. That's the cool part, I think, behind this is we had an idea, you had an idea, you had a vision, we instituted it together, we got change, and then it got legs of its own, and the industry took the concept and made it better. And I think that's pretty cool.
That really makes me proud to be part of this industry.
Absolutely. Yeah, when you can, just think about when you can have an idea and then influence that much research and change. It shows you how, like you said, you can walk away and feel and rest saying, I think I can save some lives. I think this change is going to save a lot of lines down the road, in my opinion. I
think we've made a big effort toward that, and we've gotten a response.
Yeah. And when I look at, like, in the 2023 code cycle, in the 2023 code cycle, nobody is saying we need to remove GFCI and GFPE protection from marinas. Nobody, even the people who design marinas, are saying this is doable, and they're doing it, and they understand the value and the need. They see the statistics. You can't argue with the loss of life. And and now in the 2023 code cycle, what they're talking about is providing an emergency shutdown method so that if you see somebody struggling, that they can kill power to that dock from hitting one of those mushroom buttons that are located, and they're debating, do we have one central location for it, or do we put one on every pedestal? And how do we solve that? How do we get it so that you can, it's just like a gas station. If you see a problem, there's that mushroom at a fueling station. You just hit that button and it kills power to the pumps and everything so that you don't have a hazard in your hands. So if you see somebody struggling in the water and you suspect electricity, you hit the button and you can kill power to that dock.
I did not know that, Tom.
Yeah, that's a big discussion right now.
That is really exciting.
Yep.
That's so exciting. I'm so pleased that our industry is going that far.
Yeah. And you know what, Joe? What's so cool is to know that you were at the heart of this change. You know, you're retired now, you're enjoying your family, and you're enjoying your grandson, right?
3 grandkids.
3?
We're up to 3 now. You know those Catholics.
That's right. Yeah, us Catholics. That's good. Wow.
But Tom, it's not just me. It's you and me that share this.
It's a teamwork. It's absolutely. Yes. And if there's anything I've recognized about codes and standards, Joe, it's not one person, but it takes one person to share their idea. And it takes a group of individuals and an industry to make it better. That's my thought on it.
That's right.
You know? And so we got
on a side note,
yeah.
I was at a inspectors meeting, and I asked the guys about marinas and how they felt about them. Mm-hmm. And the fellow said, "You're on a marina, don't go in the water."
Yeah. Yep. Now
so it's recognized.
It is. It's absolutely recognized. And so a couple things are happening, right? Because of this change in the code, IAEI meetings and webinars and whatnot are all going on, educating people about the hazards and helping explain the code requirements. There's signage now, no swimming requirements for these marinas. And to Frederick Fowler's, Frederick just put a note in the chat and he said, and safe boating. And that's another piece of this puzzle. I mean, if I look at Lucas Ritz, Lucas didn't perish in a marina because there was a problem with the infrastructure. Lucas experienced shock due to a boat that was miswired, and it energized the water around that boat, but it was plugged into the shore. And it was energizing the water around it. So what's happening now, to Frederick's point, the boating industry is also becoming more and more aware of electric shock drowning, of how to, the care you have to take when you're working on your boat. And it's an important piece of the puzzle that you can't forget. It's not just about the infrastructure, it's also about that boat. And the National Electrical Code doesn't apply to the boat itself. So, and then the other thing that the code did in the 2020 cycle is they required a pedestal with a testing system so that you can test boats before they plug into your marinas, so that you don't take down the marina when they plug in, so they can test their boat and then either go to a what do they call, a slip, where they can plug their boat in, or they go to a dry dock or another dock that doesn't have any electricity to it and not plug in because they're a hazard.
That's right. That's right.
But Felix, I feel passionate about this one, and it's really personal because I can remember the day I got that note on my chair. I come back from a trip, and there was I don't know if it was an envelope. I think it was just a printout out, and there was a sticky on the top of it, a sticky note. and from Joan it said, "Come see me," or we need to talk. I think that's what it said. And I read through that, and it was captivating, and that was the beginning of a long journey in marina safety. It's fantastic to see an idea actually cause a ruckus in the industry. There were a lot of people mad. I can remember there was at one of the, to your point, Joe, it was in Boston, and I was at an IAI meeting over there, and there was a gentleman who was just livid, and he was a boater. And he said, "This is ridiculous, and it'll never work. This has no place in the code." And he was going on and on and on and on and on. But that's what it takes to get something done. You need to start that ball rolling, and we got it rolling.
And be persistent. You have a good idea, and you know it's needed.
That's the key. And the recipe for this success was in the substantiation. Unfortunately, all you've got to do is search the web for electric shock drowning or marina and death. And it is amazing. In fact, Lucas Ritz, remember Lucas's story? His father was told his son drowned, and his son had a life preserver on, and there was no water in his lungs. And they said, and his father said, "I want an answer. I want to know what happened. Why did this happen to my son? I want to know." And they couldn't explain it. And then that's what started. And there's another individual. And I've spoken to Mr. Ritz, and I'm working with our legal team because I want to see if we can't get some legislation to help fund updating existing marinas. Because the biggest problem with an existing marina trying to bring it up to the latest version of the code is the money to be able to support that change.
Sure, yeah.
And so, I was just talking to Chris Hess, and I shared with him all of the data, and I still say that we should be able to find a senator or a congressman or a congresswoman, a congressperson somewhere, or a senator to say, "Look, let's get a bill together, and let's allocate money that we can bring these existing installations." Even if they were said it's a public, or if it's a personal, if it's a marina that, say I have a slip, a boat dock, and behind my house that's got electricity to it, and I need to update it, I should be able to get some help to get that done. We're spending money on a lot of other things in infrastructure in the United States. This is a piece of infrastructure that I think can save a lot of lives.
I agree, Tom. I certainly agree. And I know whose picture is in your wallet, just like mine.
Yeah, in fact, there's not too many people I tell that to. I know that you and you called it. I got to produce it. We all carry Lucas's picture, 1991 to 1999. And I've carried this ever since. You brought this up, you laminated this, and you said, "This is why we do what we do. Lucas is why we do what we do, and we're trying to help save lives and influence change in the industry, and we'll make something happen," and we did it. Thanks to you, Joe.
Thanks to us.
Yep. All right. Well, that's
Tom, I'm honored to be in your club. I didn't know what Buck 41 was, but I am so proud of that.
Well, I will also send you. I created a page on my webpage, which I have to turn it live. I got to get yours and Larry Ayer's done because Larry Ayer is a part of the Buck 41 Club. So far we have. I've got Jimmy Dollard, Scott Margolin, Nihad El Sharif. You and Larry Ayer are all a part of the Buck 41 Club, and I got to get your webpage turned on. I'll send you a link to it when I get it turned on, which hopefully will be tonight. And I'll get that up and running for you, and then I'll send you your Buck 41, brother.
Oh, great.
Cool
Is there a
beans.
T-shirt for that? Or a hat?
You know what? I said, I wish I had a T-shirt. I gotta get T-shirts made up. I gotta find a sponsor. I gotta get a sponsor. I gotta see if Eaton will sponsor the Buck 41 T-shirt or a hat. You know, something like that. Gotta love it. Well, thank you, Joe. Thanks for what you've done, and you know, I think that you made a difference, and I wanted to share that with you, and I wanted to thank you personally, and thank you for being a friend.
You are very, very welcome. And I am honored to be in this club. So honored that if you look at my picture, I grew a goatee.
I see that. I see that.
Maybe
You grew a goatee. I love it. I love it. We look like twins.
we are twins.
I love it, Joe. All right, brother. Well, I will let you get back to
Okay, man.
your grandkids and your day. And I appreciate you
Thank you,
dialing
Tom.
in.
Tom, tell Bobby Joe I send my love.
I'll do that. I will do that, and you do the same. And give everybody hugs and kisses.
Okay. I will. Thank you, partner.
All right, partner. Take care, Joseph.
All right. Bye.
Bye. All right. Okay. Well, that was Joe Fello, and non-electrical occupations are the most affected by electrical hazards. Now we must think how we make electrical safety a global culture. Santiago, you are absolutely right. How do we influence? And here's what happens, in my opinion. Here's how we influence change. If you think about Joe, you know, I'm traveling, I'm out teaching, and I'm out working with different organizations. I sit on different panels and whatnot. And I come back, and Joe had a piece of paper on my desk, on my chair. He didn't want me to miss it. And it said, we need to talk. And that was the beginning of influencing change in the National Electrical Code and raising electrical safety. What we have to do globally is figure out how do we recognize the issues? How do we recognize and raise the awareness? So I think the first step is to raise awareness of the hazard. If you can show the number of people that are being killed, in this case for Marinas, there were a lot of people, a lot of children and teenagers and adults. And there's examples of where the family dog jumped in and it was struggling, and then the daughter jumped in to save the dog, and then she was struggling. The brother jumped in to save the daughter or his sister, and then he was struggling. And then out of all of that, you lose 2 or 3 lives because you've had so many different people dive in the water trying to save each other. And it happens. It's real. All right, James, thanks for joining in, brother. So just be mindful that we can all influence change by understanding the hazards and then seeking help. Don't do it alone. Reach out to other people, reach out to people involved with codes and standards, or even if it's a government official, somebody to say, hey, look, I've got this, I recognize the hazard, I think I know what the solution is. Don't bring the hazard up without trying to come up with a solution. If you recognize the hazard and you have statistics and you're not sure of the solution, partner with somebody, Santiago. Partner with somebody. So, and get those ideas moving, get the solutions going, and then try to find a home in the codes and standards world. And it's all about working together. So that's how we make a difference. And all of these children and whatnot, they're not, to your point, they're not a part of the electrical trade. They were just going to a marina to swim, and then they never went home. And why is that? Because they succumbed to the ill effects of electricity due to bad wiring, due to poor bad wiring in a boat, or damaged conductors on a pier, and no GFCI or GFPE protection. So we can institute change working together. there's anything I can do to help, please let me know. I'll try to do everything I can. And sometimes I'm limited. Sometimes I can't help. And, but I will try. So thank you, Santiago. You're missing a meeting for this, but I appreciate it. And hopefully at some time we can talk as well. I agree. So thanks everybody for tuning in, and thanks to Joe Fello for all he's done for electrical safety. And I'm honored to know him and for him to be a part of my life and help me. We work together to influence change. So that's the story today. Please stay safe, stay healthy today. Today's your day. It's only 12:39 my time, so you've got a good portion of the time. And James Smith, it's only 11:39 your time, so you've got more hours today to make a difference than I do, and I know you will. So thank you, everybody. Take care, stay safe, God bless, and please stay healthy. So have a good rest of your day. Signing off. Ciao.